Good morning. I'm back. Hello, hello. I had decided to tell a story about was probably my first memory, but I think I'm gonna save it. But we've had a really huge fire here, and this story would be the memories that I had of having to run into air raid shelters. But then this morning I decided, no, I'm going to save that for another day. So the story I'm going to tell you today is called The Park Hotel. So on a Sunday morning, my mother said to me, oh, come here, I need to do something with your hair. And she used to do this thing that I really liked. She would take part of my hair and make a braid and then turn it around on the top of my head like a little crown. But she would put, oh, look at that. We have somebody else who wants to be in the movie. That's fine, you stay here. Anyway, she would make it like into a little crown, but she would put like a ribbon in it. And we had gotten a care package from America at one point that had these two little plastic butterflies with these little clips. And when I first saw it, I didn't know what they were for. And my mother said, oh, that's gonna go in your hair. So it was really cute. She had a little pink ribbon, and then she would put my little pink butterflies, and the rest of my hair would hang down. And I liked that. I thought that was very pretty. So I said, Mama, why are you getting me all dressed up? What's happening? And she said, oh, Oma, that was my French grandmother who lived with us, she has a surprise for you. Oh, of course, surprise. When you're a little girl and you hear surprise, that's really fun. So when I was all done, my grandma came and she said, okay, come on, we're gonna do something really special. She would try to save up money, and once in a while we would go to this little cafe that was right in the center of Bremen, right by the city hall in the marketplace, Café Stecker. It was this tiny little cafe that you had to go down like into the cellar. I loved that place because it was very old. When you would walk down the steps, they had sort of worn out. They were all, worn out in the middle. It was really fun. So I thought that's what we were gonna do. Well, we took the ferry boat and we started to walk towards where the streetcar was. And she said, how are you doing? Do you think that you can walk really far? And I said, oh, yes, I can. She said, well, because I don't have enough money to do what I want to do with you and take the streetcar. And I said, no, it's fine. But the way we started to walk, I thought, I wonder where we're going, because it was not in the direction of where we needed to go to the center of Bremen. So I thought, wow, this is interesting. Where are we going? So then we ended up where the tunnel was, where the great huge, it's a beautiful old train station, and there was a tunnel to the right of it. And I thought, oh, this is really weird, because the center of the city is way off to the left. And I thought, what is she doing? And I kept saying, Oma, what are we doing? She said, oh, no, I can't tell you. It's a surprise. So finally, we ended up at the Bürgerpark, which is the huge park in Bremen, and it's really stunning. It's a gorgeous park. And at the very front of it, it has a very large pond that I absolutely adored, because it had swans on it and these colorful little ducks. And then there was this gorgeous, really impressive, huge hotel, the Park Hotel. That was like the hotel in Bremen. So we walked around to the back. It has all these curved stairs going all the way up, and apparently that was the front door. And my grandma went up there, and we went inside, and she said, we would like to sit on your terrace. And this woman looked at her and said, excuse me? And I thought, oh, that doesn't sound really good. Why is she so mad at Grandma? And this woman said, I'm sorry, but people like you are not allowed to come in here. This is an upscale establishment. I was trying to figure out what that meant. Oh, look at the little hummingbird. How sweet. Yeah, I do have the attention span of a gnat. So you'll just have to excuse me when I point things out that have nothing to do with my story. Well, anyway, I was standing there trying to figure this out. I didn't know what that meant. Well, there were 4 soldiers. They were Americans or Canadians. We had a French zone, Canadian zone, and the American zone. But they, to me, I thought they looked amazing. They all looked huge to me, and some of them had, I didn't know what that meant. They had all this, I thought it was decoration. You know, what did I know? All these different colors and these little bars, and I thought that was amazing. So I was looking at them trying to figure out what was going on. So my grandmother said, well, I don't understand this. I mean, you know, we look nice. I have money to buy a piece of cake and a coffee or a hot chocolate. So I don't understand why you won't let us in. And this woman said, well, you're just not our kind. And I'm standing there thinking, I couldn't figure any of this out. So finally, one of these tall Americans in this uniform comes over, and I couldn't believe it. He spoke fluent German. He said to this woman that worked there, so what's the problem here? Why are you not letting these 2 people in? And she said, well, you know, this is really not the kind of clientele that we want in our hotel. And this guy said, well, actually, they belong to us, and we're gonna go out on the terrace. And this woman said, what do you mean they belong? Look, we're taking this lady and her child on the terrace with us, so show us our table. And my grandma, who spoke pretty good English, started to talk to him in English, and she said, but how come you speak German? And he said, oh, I'm German, but I emigrated to Canada. But he said, come on, we're taking you out there. This is ridiculous. You're not gonna be turned away, not as long as we're here. So we sat down at this beautiful big table with these, there were 2 were Canadians, 1 was an American, and they said, no, come on, you're gonna sit with us. And then when they came to take an order, my grandma said, well, I saw that you had Pflaumenkuchen, which was plum cake. Oh, I love that. They are really flat pieces like this, and they have Italian plums on them, and it's totally yummy. And you always put a lot of whipped cream on it. And so my grandma ordered 1 piece of the plum cake, and then she ordered a cup of coffee. So the waitress said, you cannot just order 1 piece of cake and 1 coffee. So the Canadian that spoke German talked to my grandma, and he said, you don't have enough money for 2 pieces of cake, do you? And she said, well, no, I don't. And so he said, he looked at me and he said, so what would you like? Do you want the Pflaumenkuchen? And I said, oh, yes, please, I would like that. And he said, and then you want a lot of whipped cream, right? And I said, oh, yes, please, I really, really like whipped cream. And you know what happens at home when we have whipped cream? And he said, no, why don't you tell me? I said, my papa puts his finger in the whipped cream and he puts it on my nose. And he said, oh, it sounds like you have a really nice papa. And I said, oh, yes, I do. He's really, really nice, and he's super smart. And he looked at me and he said, oh, yeah, wait until you're about 15 or 16. You're not going to think he's smart anymore. And I thought, I wonder what he means by that. How could my daddy not be smart anymore? But anyway, so this waitress was very upset about the fact that they had brought us in there. Oh, and then before she left, he said, and then what would you like to drink? And I said, oh, I would like Kaffee verkehrt. And the waitress looked at me and she said, Kaffee verkehrt. And my grandma chimed in. She said, yes, that's what we do at home. She gets a cup like we do, a regular cup, and then we fill it almost full with milk, and then I take a tablespoon of coffee and I put it in there, and that's Kaffee verkehrt. And that makes her feel like she's a big girl. And I said, yes, that's what I would like. So we sat there in this beautiful garden. You can see it's on the side where you can see that big pond with the swans. And my grandma, like I said, she spoke pretty good English, So she was talking to all of them, and then the one that spoke German, he kept saying, you know, this is really not fair. We need to speak German. The little one doesn't know what we're talking about. And I said, oh no, that's okay. I'm just watching the swans, and I'm looking at everything, and that's quite all right. But you know what? I'm gonna go to America when I'm big, and I'm learning English already. I can already say something in English. And he said, okay, well, what can you say? And I said, well, actually, it's a song. And he said, okay, so everybody be quiet. The little one is gonna sing us a song. So I said, Oma, is that okay if I do it? And she said, yeah, it's fine. So I said, it's a long, long way to Tipperary. It's a long way to go. And they all just burst out laughing. And I said, and that's all I know. I don't know the rest yet. And one of them said, let me just guess. Your grandma taught you that, right? And I said, oh, yes, yes. And now I'm learning another song, and it's about an old man and a duck. But I don't know that one yet. They were just cracking up. And one of them said, well, you know, it's a really good way to learn English and singing. So after we had our cake and my Kaffee verkehrt, they said, so what are you going to do now? And my grandma said, oh, I'm going to take her to the rhododendron park. Bremen has one of the largest rhododendron parks in all of Europe, and it is absolutely glorious. I mean, there are rhododendrons that are 20 feet high. They're just huge, and it's so beautiful. And they said, you know what? We've heard about that. Would you mind if we went with you? And my grandma said, well, no, of course, but it's a long way to walk. And they said, well, we don't walk, you know, we have a car. So he said, hold on, let me get the driver and tell him that we have 2 more people. So he walked away. He walked to the hotel. Apparently that driver was waiting in the parking lot. So he had the driver come up to the front door. So I could not believe it. There was this huge car and this man that looked like he had sort of a different kind of a uniform. And he said, oh, hello, little lady. And he opened the door and he said, okay, you get in here. And I thought, oh my God, I'm getting in a car. I've never been in a car before. So when they all piled in, one of them said, well, it's a good thing that you're so tiny, and you're her grandmother? You're not her mother? And my grandma said, no, she's my granddaughter. And he said, that's amazing. I thought that you were her mother. Well, it's a good thing you're such a tiny little thing. Otherwise, we wouldn't all fit here in the car, but we're fitting in here. So when we all got in, I said, do you know this is a very, very special day? And they said, why is it special? I said, I've been wanting to go to the Park Hotel with my grandma for a long, long time, but we never had enough money. And now I'm inside of a car. I've never been in a car before. So one of them said, okay, wait, stop, driver, stop. Okay, hold on. So he said, we're gonna stop and you are gonna sit next to the driver in the front. And he said, you don't mind, Grandma, you don't mind? You're gonna have to sit on my lap. And she said, no, that's okay. I've sat on a guy's lap before and I sort of like it. She was just a real character. And they said, yeah, because if she's never been in a car, she's got to be sitting up in the front. So we went to the Rhododendron Park and we spent what seemed like an eternity in there. It was just gorgeous. They could not believe how beautiful that was. It was, like I said, they're just so old, and some of them are like 10, 20 feet wide and that high, and then these beautiful blossoms. Those were pretty expensive back then, so I always wanted us to get one in the garden, you know, tiny little one, but we didn't have the money. But they did grow like all over northern Germany, and they're still some of my favorites, and that's why actually many, many years later, I talked my sweet husband into going to Nepal, because they are indigenous from Nepal, and they grow wild out in the Himalayas. It's just unbelievable. that's why I talked my sweetheart. What did I do with my glass? Excuse me. I'm old. I forget things. I need a sip. Thank you. But that's why Frank and I ended up going to Nepal, because of the rhododendron. And I found out recently that Bremen has a rhododendron club, and they tend to go to Nepal like every other year, which would, that would be fun. But I don't think I want to hang out with that many Germans for that long. I'll probably say something that's not very nice, so let's forget about that. Anyway, when we were all done looking at all those beautiful flowers, they said, "Oh, so where do you live?" And Grandma said, "Well, we live on Stadtwerder." And they said, "Where's that?" And Grandma described it. She said, "Well, it's on the other side of the river. The Osterdeich is on this side." And one of them said, "Oh, that some of us live up there, so we know." So it's all those garden plots on the other side of the river. And Grandma said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh, I didn't know anybody actually lived there." And she said, "Well, for people like us who didn't have any place to live, because there's no place to go, they allow us to live there. We could build a tiny little house, so that's where we live." And he said, "How are you going to get there with that little one? We're way on the other side of town." And she said, "Well, we'll walk." And he talked to the other guys, and he said, "You know what? Did you hear where they live?" And they all said, "Yeah, we heard that." "Well, we can't do this, can we?" And two of them said, "Well, we need to get back because there's stuff that we need to do." But one of them said, "Well, I don't. So you don't mind if I take them home, do you?" And they said, "No, just drop us off first." So they lived in one of the big mansions very close to the park where we went. That was all of the soldiers that, were like generals or colonels or whatever. They all lived in these big old mansions, which was very close to the Park Hotel. So we dropped them off, and then they drove us out to where we lived. And when we got to our little lane, the driver said, "Wow, yeah, I can drive down there, but it's gonna be hard to open the door." Well, look at that. Hello, how sweet. And the guy said, the soldier said, "We're gonna drive them right to their little gate. They're both skinny. We can open the door. I don't want to drop them off here. I want to take them home in style." So yeah, the car just barely fit in between these rows of hedges, and we got to our gate, and my papa was in the garden, and he looked, and he went like, looked again, and he went, hey, what's going on?" And he came walking over. My dad didn't speak any English, so my grandma translated, and he told, "Isn't that sweet?" So he told the soldier how grateful he was that they brought us home, and how he thought that was fabulous, and he thanked them for being there in the first place, and he thanked them for everything they were doing, and that he was so happy that we were getting care packages, and what a blessing it was that they had come there to help us, because otherwise we all would have died. And so they had a little conversation, and I was running into the house, and I said, Mama, you'll never know what happened. Oh my God, we were at the Park Hotel, and I had Zwetschgenkuchen with lots and lots of whipped cream, and I had my own cup with Kaffee verkehrt, and then you'll never guess what happened. I got to ride in a car. I sat by the front, by the driver, and they took us to the rhododendron park, and then, "Come, Mama, come, look, it's this really beautiful, big, huge, it's like a big black car, look, it's right there." They brought us home. And when we got back, I thanked them, and then I said, "Oh, you know what? So maybe when I'm big, you'll see me sometime, because I'm gonna be in America, and I'm gonna have a car too." And the soldier said, so you're going to have a driver? And I said, oh, no, I'm going to learn how to drive because I think that would be really fun. And he said, is there one more thing you'd like to do? And I said, yes. Could I come in? And I want the horn to blow. Can I do that, please? And he said, yes. Why don't you do one for you, one for your papa, one for your mama, and one for your grandma? And I said, okay, yeah, I would like that. And then he just said, you know what? You people are just so courageous. And I'm really, really glad that we met you. And he gave me a big hug. And he said, you know, I'm the one that lives in Canada, right? And I said, oh, yeah, that's right. So then maybe I have to drive up to Canada and see if I can find you. So if you see me and I'm honking the horn several times, you better turn around because that'll be me. And he said, okay, good. I'll see you then. You take good care. And that's my story. It's the Park Hotel.